Biology and history. History is the fragment of biology. The life of man is a portion of the vicissitudes of organisms on land and sea. Sometimes wandering alone in the woods on a summer day, we hear or see the movement of 100 species of flying, leaping, creeping, crawling, burrowing things. The startled animals scurry away at our coming, the birds scatter, the fish disperse in the brook. Suddenly, we perceive to what a perilous minority we belong on this impartial planet, and for a moment we feel, as these varied denizens clearly do, that we are passing interlopers in their natural habitat. Then all the chronicles and achievements of man fall humbly into the history and perspective of polymorphous life. All our economic competition, our strife for mates, our hunger and love and grief and war are akin to the seeking, meeting, striving and suffering that hide under these fallen trees or leaves or in the waters or on the boughs. Therefore, the laws of biology are the fundamental lessons of history. We are subject to the processes and trials of evolution, to the struggle for existence and the survival of the fittest to survive. If some of us seem to escape the strife for the trials, it is because our group protects us, but that group itself must meet the tests of survival. So the first biological lesson of history is that life is competition. Competition is not only the life of trades, it is the trade of life. Peaceful when food abounds, violent when the mouths outrun the food. Animals eat one another without qualm. Civilized men consume one another by due process of law. Cooperation is real and increases with social development, but mostly because it is a tool and form of competition. We cooperate in our group, our family, community, club, church, party, race, or nation, in order to strengthen our group in its competition with other groups. Competing groups have the qualities of competing individuals: acquisitiveness, pugnacity, partisanship, pride. Our states, being ourselves multiplied, are what we are. They write our natures in bold type and do our good and evil on an elephantine scale. We are acquisitive, greedy and pugnacious, because our blood remembers millenniums through which our forebears had to chase and fight and kill in order to survive, and had to eat to their gastric capacity for fear they should not soon capture another feast. War is a nation's way of eating. It promotes cooperation because it is the ultimate form of competition. Until our states become members of a large and effectively protective group, they will continue to act like individuals and families in the hunting stage. The second biological lesson of history is that life is selection. In the competition for food or mates or power, some organisms succeed and some fail. In the struggle for existence, some individuals are better equipped than others to meet the tests of survival. Since nature, here meaning total reality and its processes, has not read very carefully the American Declaration of Independence or the French Revolutionary Declaration of the Rights of Man, we are all born unfree and unequal, subject to our physical and psychological heredity and to the customs and traditions of our group. Diversely endowed in health and strength, in mental capacity and qualities of character. Nature loves difference as the necessary material of selection and evolution. Identical twins differ in 100 ways, and no two peas are alike. Inequality is not only natural and inborn, it grows with the complexity of civilization. Hereditary inequalities breed social and artificial inequalities. Every invention or discovery is made or seized by the exceptional individual and makes the strong stronger and the weak relatively weaker than before. Economic development specializes functions, differentiates abilities, and makes men unequally valuable to their group. if we knew our fellow men thoroughly, we could select 30% of them whose combined ability would equal that of all the rest. Life and history do precisely that with a sublime injustice reminiscent of Calvin's God. Nature smiles at the unison of freedom and equality in our utopias, for freedom and equality are sworn and everlasting enemies, and when one prevails, the other dies. Leave men free, and their natural inequalities will multiply almost geometrically, as in England and America in the 19th century under laissez-faire. To check the growth of inequality, liberty must be sacrificed, as in Russia after 1917. Even when repressed, inequality grows. Only the man who is below the average in economic ability desires equality. Those who are conscious of superior ability desire freedom, and in the end, superior ability has its way. Utopias of equality are biologically doomed, and the best that the amiable philosopher can hope for is an approximate equality of legal justice and educational opportunity. A society in which all potential abilities are allowed to develop and function will have a survival advantage in the competition of groups. This competition becomes more severe as the destruction of distance intensifies the confrontation of states. The third biological lesson of history is that life must breed. Nature has no use for organisms, variations, or groups that cannot reproduce abundantly. She has a passion for quantity as a prerequisite to the selection of quality. She likes large litters and relishes the struggle that picks the surviving few. Doubtless she looks unapprovingly at the upstream race of 1,000 sperms to fertilize one ovum. She is more interested in the species than in the individual and makes little difference between civilization and barbarism. She does not care that a high birth rate has usually accompanied a culturally low civilization, and the low birth rate a civilization culturally high, and she, here meaning nature as the process of birth, variation, competition, selection, and survival, sees to it that a nation with a low birth rate should be periodically chastened by some more virile and fertile group. Gaul survived against the Germans through the help of Roman legions in Caesar's days and through the help of British and American legions in our time. When Rome fell, the Franks rushed in from Germany and made Gaul France. If England and America should fall, France, whose population remained almost stationary through the 19th century, might again be overrun. If the human brood is too numerous for the food supply, nature has three agents for restoring the balance: famine, pestilence, and war. In a famous essay on population in 1798, Thomas Malthus explained that without these periodic checks, the birth rate would so far exceed the death rate that the multiplication of mouths would nullify any increase in the production of food. Though he was a clergyman and a man of good will, Malthus pointed out that the issuance of relief funds or supplies to the poor encouraged them to marry early and breed improvidently, making the problem worse. The advances of agricultural and contraceptive technology in the 19th century apparently refuted Malthus. In England, the United States, Germany, and France, the food supply kept pace with births, and the rising standard of living deferred the age of marriage and lowered the size of the family. The multiplication of consumers was also a multiplication of producers. New hands developed new lands to raise more food. The recent spectacle of Canada and the United States exporting millions of bushels of wheat while avoiding famine and pestilence at home seemed to provide a living answer to Malthus. If existing agricultural knowledge were everywhere applied, the planet could feed twice its present population. Malthus would answer, of course, that this solution merely postpones the calamity. There is a limit to the fertility of the soil. Every advance in agricultural technology is sooner or later cancelled by the excess of births over deaths. And meanwhile, medicine, sanitation, and charity nullify selection by keeping the unfit alive to multiply their like. To which Hope replies, the advances of industry, urbanization, education, and standards of living in countries that now endanger the world by their fertility will probably have the same effect there in reducing the birth rate as they have had in Europe and North America. Until that equilibrium of production and reproduction comes, it will be a counsel of humanity to disseminate knowledge and means of contraception. Ideally, parentage should be a privilege of health, not a byproduct of sexual agitation. Is there any evidence that birth control is dysgenic, that it lowers the intellectual level of the nation practicing it? Presumably, it has been used more by the intelligent than by the simple, and the labors of educators are apparently cancelled in each generation by the fertility of the uninformed. But much of what we call intelligence is the result of individual education, opportunity, and experience, and there is no evidence that such intellectual acquirements are transmitted in the genes. Even the children of PhDs must be educated and go through their adolescence missiles of errors, dogmas, and isms. Nor can we say how much potential ability and genius lurk in the chromosomes of the harassed and handicapped poor. Biologically, physical vitality may be at birth of greater value than intellectual pedigree. Nietzsche thought that the best blood in Germany was in peasants' veins. Philosophers are not the fittest material from which to breed the race. Family limitation played some part in the history of Greece and Rome. It is amusing to find Julius Caesar offering in year 59 before Christ rewards to Romans who had many children, and forbidding childless women to ride in litters or wear jewelry. Augustus renewed this campaign some 40 years later with like futility. Birth control continued to spread in the upper classes, while immigrant stocks from the Germanic north and the Greek or Semitic east replenished and altered the population of Italy. Very probably this ethnic change reduced the ability or willingness of the inhabitants to resist governmental incompetence and external attack. In the United States, the lower birth rate of the Anglo-Saxons has lessened their economic and political power, and the higher birth rate of Roman Catholic families suggests that by the year 2000, the Roman Catholic Church will be the dominant force in national as well as in municipal or state governments. A similar process is helping to restore Catholicism in France, Switzerland, and Germany. The lands of Voltaire, Calvin, and Luther may soon return to the papal fold. So the birth rate, like war, may determine the fate of theologies, just as the defeat of the Muslims at Tours kept France and Spain from replacing the Bible with the Quran. So the superior organization, discipline, morality, fidelity, and fertility of Catholics may cancel the Protestants' Reformation and the French Enlightenment. There is no humorist like history.